What's up, my movers and shakers? I'm Dave, this is MS Paints, and this is 3 tabletop gaming mechanics or tropes. They shouldn't necessarily die, but I definitely have a passive dislike to them. Suffice to say, I think everyone's world has gotten a little bit / a lot busier lately. The carefree days of playing a tabletop game for like a few hours, an afternoon, or God forbid the entire day, does feel like a distant memory. And because of this, I have kind of become quite selective and picky about what games I choose to invest my time and money in. And one of the major things, apart from a vibe check for the game and how pretty the models are, if it is a model-based game, the main thing is mechanics and whether I am going to enjoy them. Without further ado, let's get that Indian Yappa Pie punishment strap ready, lubed up, and ready to go, and crack on with this video's list.
Give me Yappa Pie Indian punishment strap number 1!
6-sided dice. Hold up. I understand that for many of us, myself included, the introduction into this tabletop miniature gaming hobby thing was with 6-sided dice. And that is probably where the majority of us are going to stay. If you're familiar with how these dice behave, which sounds ridiculous, and how they interface with specific stat blocks in games that you regularly play, and, maneuvering around them and understanding that a lot of the complexity of the game comes from stats and their relation to a 6-sided dice, you're probably very comfortable with them. But I am not massively attached to them, to be honest. My main issue with the D6 is that it's not impossible, because it is possible, but it feels weird when you're trying to generate a sense of scale and a sense of scope and a power differential between 2 units, like a Tower Supremacy and a Termagant both use D6s. And there's a lot of extra work and bookkeeping that needs to be done around that to factor in that these two technically can take a shot at each other. But to achieve that solution and resolution, I've had to look at multiple blocks of charts and numbers, and I've then had to do some semi-basic maths using fixed stat blocks that are either manipulating that number on the dice, or the number on the dice is deciding which part of the stat block I use, and sometimes a combination of the two. And by the time this is all said and done, the actual initial dice roll, or multiple rolls that I've made, don't forget, like if you roll 20 of these things, that's more bookkeeping. The dice can feel extremely anticlimactic. It still matters, but by the time a dum-dum like me has got to the result and understood what it actually means, that initial roll of like a 3 or 4, it just feels... Well, I've just forgotten about it, to be honest. I've forgotten the excitement of rolling a dice to see what the outcome is, because I've had to make several phone calls, phone a friend. And I'm sure that is not the way for everyone, because, certain people have a better grasp on bookkeeping and admin and numbers than I do. But you have to factor in that not everyone, kind of like me, is good at keeping track of those kind of things, carrying the numbers, and manage all of that information while still trying to have fun and having a tactical play of a miniature wargame. I'm not especially dumb by any means, but I do have issues doing that, and therefore I can only assume that at least one other person in the world will have that issue. And for me, pictures on dice are even better. I know that a lot of people don't like pictures on dice because... I don't know why people don't like pictures on dice. I'm happy generally with pictures on D6s, like a repurposed D6, so long as the picture is there to aid convenience of play. There's some games where the pictures on the dice and the dice colours and the number of sides just add to the complete fucking faffery of trying to get anything done. And that is not really conducive to the point of having pictures on dice. I am looking at you, Fallout Wasteland Warfare.
The best to you. What's up, guys? Tony Boomtown here, back in perpetual forward motion, and I'm here today to talk to you about my second favorite thing in the world, Squarespace. Have you ever dived headfirst into the muck? Have you ever dived headfirst into the murky world of web design and thought to yourself, I have no idea what I'm doing? Well, join the party. That was until I met Squarespace. With Squarespace on my side, I'm going to have no problem designing the website of my dreams. Because with Squarespace, I can pick from a massive selection of templates made by award-winning designers and customize them in their infinite possibilities and combinations. Wait, that ain't even the best part, guys. I want to use a website to advertise my less than reputable side hustle, and I can do this with a free head, and I can do this with a fresh and funky portfolio page, a blog, or maybe even a news section. That's incredible. All of this and more within a super compact, browser-based web designer. Wow. And say that business ever wanted to go online for sales and moving certain objects onto interested buyers? Well, now it can. Because of the Squarespace got that fully integrated eShop online shop system. It's just ready to go, guys. It's an online store, okay? And I can upload my shop's existing EPOS system, all my stock, amounts, volumes, prices, all immediately uploaded onto my website with one click. Boom, maybe 3 clicks. And of course, guys, we got to talk about the domain acquisition tab. Come up with a snazzy name for your website or just use the business's existing name. Check availability and immediately link it to your page and the rest of the world. Stop it. You can only make it so easy. It's too easy. So come on down to the Squarespace website and emporium at www.squarespace.com/MSPaints and use the code MSPaints at checkout to save yourself 10% off your first website subscription or domain.
Give me Yappa Indian punishment strap number 2.
Retiring miniatures. Okay, so all hyperbole aside, no one can take your miniatures away. Unless you have a problem and your family has decided to step in, then they can take your miniatures away. Of course, I'm specifically, but absolutely not specifically, definitely talking about the recent Age of Sigmar cull that happened, where a lot of people took your miniatures away. And from what I know and understand, when a miniature goes into Legends or Legacy, it won't be counted in future editions of the game. It won't receive any updates in further editions or with supplements. But your model does still exist and you do still own it, and hopefully you painted it. And over a friendly game, your opponent, and who is also hopefully your friend, shouldn't have any issue with you using something you've used before and something you own. If they do have an issue, then you need a new fucking opponent. And more importantly, if they have an issue, you probably need a new fucking friend. This model retirement, or in the case of something like X-Wing, where a new edition came out and they expected you to buy materials to then update your current models to be usable in the new meta, that is all kind of bullshit. Like, when it becomes an issue and a topic of conversation, what exactly are we meeting up to roll dice for? Like, are we here on a Sunday afternoon to throw some dice and hang out? Or are we here to enforce the doctrine of a company that decided to make a financially motivated decision disguised as creative maneuvering? But, you know, despite all the hopefulness in that sentiment, for example, if you're playing a new edition of a game that just flat out does not include your model anymore, like in Black and White, that model is no longer fucking supported. Well, I mean, you just play it anyway, right? Wargaming is intrinsically tied to a core principle of making units for the battlefield that A, will sell, and B, will make an interesting army list, and C, both of those at the same time. And by that, I mean whatever has been retired probably has a counterpoint that either still exists and is supported, or is on the way out and included in the new rule system. As far as I'm concerned, light cavalry is light cavalry, whatever its stupid name is. Sure, your Hellstorm war cannon on a 60mm base, crewed by 2 operators individually on 25mm bases, is unfortunately getting retired, and it's being replaced with a Screaming Skull catapult on a 60mm base that is crewed by 2 units individually on 25mm bases. Maybe I am being a little bit intellectually stunted when I say this, but as long as they are basically the same unit, you can just say it's the new one and play it as that, right? The Stormcast stuff has been particularly egregious when the Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger got moved to Legacy and out of production, only to be replaced with the Lord Vigilant on the Griff Stalker. So you can't use the Lord Arcanum on a Griff Charger, but you can use the Lord Vigilant on the Griff Stalker. I mean, yes, I understand companies need to keep a turnover of models going to keep the money rolling and keep the profits coming in. That's entirely fair enough. And they're going to, when they do bring this new stuff out, they're going to have to trim some of the old shit to keep the game balanced. Obviously, my question then is, why aren't the games balanced? But the thing really that needs to die is the people that will absolutely adhere to it. Actually, no, adhering to it is fine because some people play tournaments and that is entirely their prerogative, and I'm not going to shoot on tournament players because that's their thing. I think the issue comes with the people who choose to enforce it, especially in like friendly games. I mean, I no longer play with strangers, so I don't have the issue so much. And if your friends don't like it, please refer to my previous point about getting some new friends.
Give me Yappa Pie Indian punishment strap number 3.
You go, I go. If you've not heard of this one before, more than likely you've experienced it and played something that has the you go, I go. I guess mechanic? It is a mechanic. You go, I go, despite its name, doesn't actually really seem to convey how it works. Because you go, I go to me does sound like alternating activations, but you go, it's more of a you go, I go with what's left of my stuff now. You go again. And I go, but then realised there wasn't really much point in getting most of this stuff out of the box in the first place. Essentially, you or your opponent gets to make a full move, gets to do absolutely everything at once before you do something. Warhammer 40k does this. It always has, it still does. And with the amount of administration work that, at least for me, from my perspective again, that goes into playing a turn of that, there can be a lot of just kind of sitting and waiting. Like Goobertown did a very interesting video on it where he essentially described it as his opponent wins the roll-off, he sits down and watches his opponent talk to his rulebook and talk to his dice tray. Yeah, which has been my experience as well. Torturous. Again, of course, if you go, I go is your thing, then I'm by no means shitting on that. That is just, I'm sorry, but that just happens to be the way that I feel about it. But I did get spoiled by Star Wars Legion and more recently one-page rules. Those are large-scale war games that, alternate activations are built into the foundations of them, I think, to make them more accessible and more engaging, or at least on paper more engaging. But I like this, I suppose it's a more recent idea that not only now are bigger, more popular war games and large-scale war games, they're not only changing to smaller little activation phases, but they're also changing the way that units activate and how they activate. So again, referring to Star Wars Legion, like units within a certain range of your commander unit, you can decide which order they are going to activate in, but obviously the order they activate in doesn't factor in how the enemy's going to activate. And anything outside of that commander's range is a random activation. And I like that because they've actually factored in thematics with game mechanics. And although I haven't played it, Bolt Action does alternating activations, but also it does like a fog of war thing where you put a unit's, counter chip into a bag and then you pull blind to see which unit activates. And I really dig that. That does sound fun. And alternating activations, even in the most basic form, like I activate a unit, it does everything it can do. Opponent activates a unit, it does everything it can do. or even I move everything, you move everything, I shoot, you shoot, I melee, you melee. You know, even the most basic of those things does really help, like, I think the person-to-person engagement in the game. But of course, I do see a point in it, like those historical war games I used to play with my dad. Like, primarily everything is about movement formations and an army moving as an army, rather than one unit goes there, one unit goes there, and it's all sort of skirmishy reaction, guerrilla warfare sort of stuff. So for rank and file, yes, it kind of makes sense. But even then, I feel like it should be I move, you move, shoot, shoot, melee, melee. So that was my little whinge on mechanics / tropes / things I don't like, or 3 of them at least, about miniature tabletop wargaming. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my wonderful Patreon community who continue to support this channel and one another in the world's most wholesome hobby Discord. I will be back next time for... I've forgotten what I'm doing next time, but come back anyway.